Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday morning to you. Welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma, and I hope you had a fantastic weekend. Listen, we got Christmas coming up, and first of all, I want to apologize for not giving a very specific discount rate on, 2 or 3 books. So here's what I've decided to do. For the rest of December and all of January, on all orders of $25 or more, I'm going to offer a 15% discount plus free shipping. Okay? So, for the rest of December 2021, all of January 2021, U.S. orders only, on all orders of $25 or more, you get a 15% discount plus free shipping. Now, that amounts to an awfully good percentage of discount, okay? So, after thinking about it for an awful long time, I thought, well, instead of just offering 1 or 2 books or 2 or 3 or 4 books, why not just make a broad-based discount basically across the board on everything that I am offering, and make it sufficient to where it makes a really good savings. And especially for, the holidays coming up. Got Christmas coming up in not quite 2 weeks, and got New Year's coming up. And speaking of which, next week, I won't be with you very much because we got company coming in for Christmas, going to enjoy the weekends, or going to enjoy the holiday, and the same for the very last week of 2021. Have a family to be visiting who's coming in, going to have a great time. And so I'm just going to chill out a little bit. All right, going to take a little bit of time off. I'll probably produce maybe 1 or 2 videos for each one of those weeks, per week, 1 or 2 per week. And the rest of the time, like I said, number 2, I'm trying to get a lot of work done on this new book that I am working on. It is entitled The Last Day, The Last Hour, The Last Trumpet Resurrection. Now, that's kind of the working title of it, but you kind of get the gist of what it's all about. And in this book, by the way, I am focused on the relationship between the resurrection, which Paul said would be at the last trumpet, 1 Corinthians 15, 51 and 52, and the fulfillment of the feast day of Sukkot, along with Shemini Atzeroth. It is more than apparent that a great host, really, of commentators either do not see the connection or they ignore the connection. Maybe they've just never seen it. I certainly hadn't, for many, many years of my life. So it doesn't speak to anything dishonest on anybody's part. It simply has to do with we are not tapped into the Jewish mentality, the Jewish concept of the feast days and how powerful it is. But make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, and this is why I'm so excited about this book. All throughout the Tanakh, all throughout the prophetic books, we find one reference after another to the end-time gathering. Well, everybody agrees with that. That's not revolutionary. It's not groundbreaking. What they fail to see is that in so many of those Old Testament eschatological passages about the end-time gathering, there are direct references, allusions, and echoes to the fulfillment of Sukkot. This is incredible stuff. And the implications of it are naturally profound. Okay, so that gives you a little bit of a rundown. I intend during the last couple of weeks of the year to, I have to be honest, I'm laying a couple of other major projects off to the side so that I can just get laser focused on finishing this book. It's currently over 220 some pages long, and it's not done. So it's going to be a pretty good sized book. And I think when it's done, I think it will be absolutely mind-opening for you. So I hope you'll look forward to that. Okay? All right. We are continuing our discussing of the Olivet Discourse, Matthew 24 and 25. We have been focused on the parable of the return of the absent master, Matthew 25:14 and following, for a good long while. And the reason for that is simple. Virtually everyone believes that Matthew 25:14 and following is in fact the final coming of the Lord. And upon that basis, they tried to divide the Olivet Discourse into a prediction of the fall of Jerusalem in AD 70 versus a coming of the Lord at the so-called end of time into the Christian age. They envision Matthew 25:14 and following as parallel to Acts chapter 1. But there are just so many facts that militate against that. So what I want to do in today's video, and as I shared with you last Thursday, we want to focus on Matthew chapter 24, 29, and following. And the reason for this is simple. This morning's video is going to focus on how Matthew chapter 24, in that text, let me turn right over there. I want to read this very, very specific language of Matthew 24 and verse 30. Notice how Jesus says, and what he is predicting would be immediately following the Great Tribulation, which he had already said the apostles would see the abomination of desolation, which would lead directly to the Great Tribulation. So immediately after the tribulation of those days, Jesus said, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, the stars will fall from the heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn. Now, here's what you need to know about this. All right? This is a direct citation of Zechariah chapter 12. Now, in my review of Mr. Kyle Pope's book, Thinking About AD 70, he tried to apply Matthew chapter 24, 29 and following to a yet future end of time coming of the Lord. Well, I pointed out that there are several textual and contextual issues with that. But look at one of the humongous, massive issues and problems with that. In Zechariah chapter 12, verse 10 and following, it says, and look, you got to read the entire text, but I don't have the time to do that this morning. But Zechariah chapter 12 is predictive of several eschatological tenets. And then he says, I will pour on the house of David and on the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and supplication. Then they will look on me whom they pierced. Yes, they will mourn for him as one mourns for his only son, and grieve for him as one grieves for a firstborn. So here is a prediction of the time of the piercing of the Son of God. They will look on me. Now, did you notice the interchange and the use of the pronouns? They will look upon me, whom they pierced. Now watch. Yes, they will mourn for him. Me, him. Me, him. Now, among other things, this proves that Jesus was pre-existent prior to his incarnation. Because this is Jesus speaking. They will look upon me, whom they have pierced, and they shall mourn for him. That's powerful, powerful stuff. But don't want to get too sidetracked here. But notice They will look on me whom they pierced. Now, some try to make this apply to John chapter 19. Well, there's no question that John uses the language, but that's not the end of it. Jesus is using this language, all the tribes of the earth shall mourn, to an event after the cross. John is looking at the cross in John chapter 19. But Jesus is applying Zechariah to events and a time after the cross. So we cannot isolate and we cannot say, well, okay, Zechariah chapter 12, that was completely fulfilled at the cross because of John 19. I'm sorry, Jesus is applying Zechariah chapter 12, verse 10, to events that would take place after the cross, events that would take place in the first century, nonetheless, at the time, pardon me, oh my goodness, horrible nose itch. At the time of the abomination of desolation, the great tribulation, immediately afterwards. Pardon me, ladies and gentlemen. Wow. And as I've said, I'm not going to stop the video because of a sneeze. Okay. I think you can see very clearly Zechariah 12 verse 10 is being utilized by the Lord to speak of events, once again, to reiterate, after the cross, during the time of the preaching of the gospel into all of the world, because after all, this gospel of the kingdom will be preached into all the world as a witness to the nations then comes in, and when you see the abomination of desolation. See, those are synchronous events, or contemporary, I should say, events. Not at the cross. And they will look on him whom they have pierced, and all the tribes of the earth shall mourn. Now, it's really, really critical at this point to realize that there's a huge division within both the amillennial, postmillennial camp about the very next verse that conflates this, or conflates all of these verses. And it's the famous passage in Revelation chapter 1. Pardon me. Behold, he is coming with the clouds, and every eye shall see him, even those who pierced him, and all the tribes of the earth shall mourn because of him. Whoa, wait a minute. Here is a passage that we are told in about 90% of the commentaries is talking about the, quote, end of time. This is supposedly Acts chapter 1. This is supposedly Matthew chapter 25, 14 and following, the return of the absent master. But who was going to see it? Even those who pierced him. What's the context of Matthew chapter 24, 29 and following? Well, let's see. All millennialists and postmillennialists alike agree it's AD 70. So we have Jesus in Matthew 24, verse 30, applying Zechariah chapter 12, verse 10 to AD 70. We have John in Revelation chapter 1 verse 7, citing the identical verse that Jesus has already applied to AD 70, and says it would be fulfilled when those who pierced him would look upon him. Now look, I've had people tell me, well, yeah, they would look upon him, or they will look upon him when they're raised from the dead. And that's when they'll look on him. Well, of course, that's what you call eisegesis. I ask you to consider that in Matthew chapter 27, as Jesus stood before Pilate, And he said to that audience, I find no fault with this man. And the crowd said, let his blood be on us and on our children. Now that's a one generational period of time. Throughout the New Testament, the terminology of you and your children, us and our children, one generational period of time, never more than that. Furthermore, they are saying, let his blood be on us. That's the living, breathing generation of the time. Folks, what we have here, Zechariah chapter 12, is talking about a time when all the land, not just the city of Jerusalem now, mind you, okay? All the land would mourn because of him. Now, tomorrow's video, I'm going to prove to you without any doubt whatsoever that this time of Zechariah chapter 12, verse 10, which Jesus in Matthew chapter 24 applied to AD 70, that John does the same thing because of Matthew chapter 27, let his blood be on us and on our children, a one generational period of time. They are the ones who would look upon him, who would mourn because their own prayer, let his blood be on us and on our children, was about to take place. So you don't want to miss tomorrow as we look closer. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, most of the commentators say, well, okay, Revelation 1:7, that's Matthew 25:14. It is Acts chapter 1. Well, if that's true, then since Jesus puts Zechariah 12 at AD 70, and since John is putting Zechariah 12 at AD 70, that means Matthew 25:14 and Acts chapter 1 is being posited at AD 70. Out of time. We've got more. I'll see you on the flip side.